Hello everyone, let's solve a problem from chapter 5. Problem number 4. I'm not going to narrate it, you can read it from the book or from the screen. And the first thing about any story problem, be it a business situation or a math story problem or whatever other document that you need to understand, you have to read it enough times, 3 times or 5 times, and start relating it to what you know. And relating it to what you know begins with knowing which data set it is about, which database it is about in this case, and what kind of tables or features do you need to do it. So pause the video if you need to. It is about AP database, and I'm going to um, first of all, remember what kind of tables are there. GLA accounts. Unfortunately, we have a hint that says which tables do we need. I think we need GLA accounts and invoice line items. So this two. So to see them better, I'm going to create a new database diagram, and I'm going to choose only the ones that I need. And here is our diagram. I'm not going to explicitly use this relationship, but there is an identification. This is a foreign key for this account number. This is a primary key in GLA accounts and a foreign key in invoice line item. Now, the meaning of this connection is for any account number, there are potentially many rows of the data, invoices and invoice items corresponding to that account number, with that account number in it. And for any invoice line, there is only one account. So that is the information that is relevant to us and also what we need to begin to be comfortable with this problem. So let me minimize this window so that I can still see the problem, but it won't occupy too much of my screen. All right, account description, line item count, and line item sum. That's what we need. Line item count and line item sum are actually calculated columns. It's the number of entries, invoice line items that have that account number. Line item sum is the sum of invoice line item amounts columns for that account number. Okay, so we are grouping by account number, but in reality they advise us to group account description. We can assume that in GL accounts, different account numbers correspond to different account descriptions. And if we were to check that, we can do it by this top 1000 rows. So we can look and we can inspect it visually, or we can quickly do select distinct account descriptions. Do they repeat or not? Distinct. So we are kind of checking the we are checking the integrity of this data. And if we have the same count of rows, then we're good. All right, let's see, 75. So we're good. There aren't, for different accounts, there isn't a matching description. So whether we group by account number or by account description doesn't really matter. What does matter, however, is that we have account number identifying the accounts in the invoice line items, and we will join on account number. All right, so let's write a query now. And I try to keep my eye on the table columns. So select, and I need to also look at the original problem. So I might actually put it on a different screen. Select account description. And then I will need to do line item account, which is the number of invoice line items that have that account number. And for that, you need to know that count is actually counting the number of occurrences, regardless whether they are the same or different, by grouping. So by every item we group on. So I can literally put in anything here. Invoice ID, invoice sequence, doesn't matter. Let me do invoice ID. And that will count invoice IDs. And when I group, it will count the number of rows, really. This will count the number of rows for which the account number is the same. And the next one is sum. We're counting line item sum. So we're counting in line item sum, we're counting invoice line item amount. Invoice line item amount, that is the column in my table, from, and if I started to capitalize, I can keep capitalizing, from geo accounts join invoice line items. And we are joining them on the corresponding account numbers, but we have to qualify because account numbers is appearing in two different tables, in which case we have to qualify. So we have to say GL accounts dot account number equals to invoice line items invoice line items table dot account number. And we are done with join. However, we need to group correctly. So group, I'm going to group by account description. I kind of have to, if it's not a calculated column, I have to group by it. And notice it's the same as grouping by GL account. By account description, group by account description. And let us see the intermediate results. We are not done yet, but we are done with much of it. So we have no column names, but we seem to be aggregating the number of book printing costs. And if you're very detailed oriented and in general a good idea, for example, find how many, first of all, find the account number because it's not in this table for book printing costs, and find how many lines in the invoice lines have this number of how many lines have that account number, and apparently it's 8. So we need to fix column names. Count invoice ID should be named as line item count, line item count. And if we want to continue this, we can continue on the next line, as the other one should be line item sum. Line item sum. And there is one more condition: filter the result set to include only those rows with line item count greater than 1. And this is about line item count. We realize that we are filtering after aggregation, and filtering after aggregation is not where condition, it is having. Also, we may not use the line item count itself. If I was to say line item count greater than 1, it would be an error, because the SQL wants to work with the original database, not the result, actually. So what we have to do instead is this. It's just more efficient. All right. And group by is underlined having count. Okay, wrong location. So after aggregation, having has to go after aggregation. So there it is. And here we are. We may be missing yet one condition from and sorted by line item count. Sort by line item count. Okay. Sort means order. Line item count. And since ordering is done after aggregation and creating the result set, we can use the result name, column name that we created, and let's run it. Order by line item count descending. All right, so by line item count descending. So feel free to first of all examine the results. We aggregated line item counts per account description, and we filtered out only the ones that have more than one invoice line item. So even though we were counting invoice ID, what we ended up counting is we ended up counting invoice line items. So it does not mean that we have 60 different freight invoices or invoice IDs. It means that we have 60 different combinations of invoice and invoice lines. So if we look at all the invoice IDs there and all the corresponding, for each invoice ID, all the corresponding invoice sequences, then that number adds up to 60. All right, I hope it makes sense, and I'll project the original question and the results together so that you can compare them yourself.